social distancing, and that's fine. We're going to be opening up our country, and we're going to be watching certain areas, and we're going to be practicing everything that Deborah's referring to right here. We're going to win the battle, but we also have, you have tremendous responsibility. We have jobs, we have people get tremendous anxiety and depression, and you have suicides over things like. Now, I'm going to sign this, and it's a great honor. $6.2 trillion. I've never signed anything with a T on it. I don't know if I can handle this one, Mitch. We can't chicken out at this point, can we? I don't think so, huh? All right, thank you all.
During this time, when there's so much focus on our physical health, it's important not to forget about our mental health. With all the changes happening as we overcome this pandemic, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, anxious, and stressed.
Just don't forget about your deployed friends, man. It's a hard time for us, too. PTSD is real. Depression is real. Suicide is real. These are things that people wake up thinking and feeling every day, just being away. You know what I mean? Feeling like they're not good enough as a spouse or as a parent because nothing they seem to do to reach back home is being effective.
Hello, this is a sister's point of view, and this is the conversation. We are the panel today. Hi, I am Tanya Kennedy.
I'm Shantae McLaughlin.
Hi, and I'm Sharika Dash, and today the conversation will be about mental illness, the stimulus package, bills that can be deferred, and serving and deployed.
We are also waiting for Tanisha Morris. She will be joining us shortly. And until then, we are going to get started on the conversation. Hello, ladies. How are you doing this morning?
Hi, how are you?
Hey.
So, Sharika, you brought up some amazing topics. The first thing you said was mental health.
Yes.
So, Shantae, go ahead and give us a little bit of your background because you are our resident mental health expert. So give us a few seconds or a few minutes of your background and what makes you an expert in the field.
So, my name is Shantae McLaughlin. I'm 40 years old, and I'm a certified peer specialist, which just means that I live with mental health, and I'm certified to be able to educate people and empower people and instill hope. People who also live with mental health. My diagnosis is bipolar 2 with psychosis. Accomplishments wise, I mean, I've been able to put people on tour with Lil Wayne and Rick Ross. I've had a nightclub. I worked in media sales, have a degree, but it doesn't mean anything. Without my medication, I become the homeless person on the streets that talks to themselves, that pees on themselves, the person that you avoid. So with mental health right now, I work for an organization where I facilitate groups, and I'm actually in conversations around doing a little more speaking engagements around mental health, speaking out about the stigma associated with it. And for years, I was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and that kind of puts me into the world of a lot of people who live with mental health because the medications actually had me displaying schizophrenic symptoms. So that's my experience, and that's what I guess makes me an expert on mental health. Lived experience.
Right. So when you say, because now I want to get off into that for about 35 more seconds. When you say the medication made you display schizophrenia, what does that exactly mean?
So when they have you on medications, if you're not schizophrenic and they put you on schizophrenic medication, the medication may have me being suicidal, the medication may have me hallucinating and being delusional and displaying symptoms or looking symptomatic of being schizophrenic when really it's just the medication. So since they've changed my medication to Vraylar, which is a bipolar medication, I haven't had the weight gain. I haven't had suicidal ideations. I'm not sleeping 15 hours a day. You know, my grandfather lived with schizophrenia, and I just remember him being asleep all the time because the medications to stabilize him would make him sleep. And that was the way of bringing balance. So now that I'm on bipolar medication, I'm lively. You wouldn't know that I had a diagnosis before. Every now and again, I would get delusional. You know, I remember a coworker buying me lunch, and he said, "Yeah, that's your Christmas gift." And I said, "Oh, you want me to throw it up at Christmas and put it under the tree?" And he was like, "What?" And I said, "Oh, never mind. It was my yeah, no, never mind." And it was because I was still taking medication, so all the way
Wow.
off calm.
Wow. So let's talk about mental health and how it is, because right now we are under quarantine.
Right.
Yes, we are under quarantine. And I titled this the meeting coronavirus and and mental health. And the reason why I titled it that was because I was thinking to myself, coronavirus and the quarantine have brought up a whole bunch of topics that would not have otherwise been brought up. Because a lot of times, especially in our community, but worldwide, mental health is brushed under the rug. People don't address mental health issues at all. Like they just don't. Like mental health is like, oh, that's that person on the street, or like you were saying, the person that you try to avoid. And right now, with people being on quarantine and the only people being left outside are the people that are that way, it's like there's a whole like the president came under large fire when he came on and said, look, we've got to get the economy back up and running because people are going to start committing suicide. And everybody was like, why did he say that? They attacked him. And I know Sharika had a difference of opinion with him, not the fact that he said it, but the way he said it. And I just felt like I understood it because, and I think because I have a daughter that dealt with suicide, and thank God she's still here. But depression will do that. Like for her, quarantine is a death sentence. She's literally like, Mom, I'm going to my brother's house. I can't stay here. I'm like, okay, bye. Because I already know my child has issues and I can't, holding her to the house, she will go stir crazy. And I'm like, bye, go to your brother. Because I already know what she's dealing with. And
Right.
and so it's almost like if she came home with the Rona, we just going to have to deal with that as it comes, because the quarantine itself would cause a whole nother problem in my house. So that's why I understand it from this, because I've dealt with suicide because I was suicidal. So
Right.
that is a thing. So Sharika, tell me what your reason for not liking how he said it or what he said.
This is my thing. We can sit around all day long and say this is going to happen, this is going to get worse, it's going to get this, and all these things are going to happen. But what we wanted and what we really needed to do is turn the situation over and think about, okay, yes, we do have to be quarantined. Yes, there's a lot of things that going on. But before we sit here and put out that there's going to be more suicides and stuff like that, let's bring God into the mix, because I don't know what God everybody else is serving. I know mine is awesome, and there anything can be changed. And before we put out here in the world that people are gonna be committing suicide because of quarantine and stuff like that, we gotta actually get people to praying and wishing for better, because it's the look of mental health is not a look. There is no one particular person. Anybody can suffer from mental health, because I actually have mental health issues. I dealt with it for a long time, and that was the only thing that could help me. Medicines, they had me on different medicines. I actually had a child that came through the time that I was on the medicine. He has several different issues because of the medicine, and me getting closer to God and learning to change things within myself, that was the only thing that helped me with my stuff, and the medicines never did work for me, because actually the medicines gave me more evil ways and more things I could do. I remember sitting in a counseling meeting with the counselor, and they was just telling me all kind of stuff, and I just said, okay, let me play with her a little bit. I started telling the lady what kind of car she was driving, and I said the voices was telling me all these things about her, and I actually had my counselor scared till she turned me over to somebody else. And it was, I'm more of a smart person, so with my mental health, it told me, okay, what you gonna do? You go outsmart everybody. It's like it knows what to work with and how to use each individual. So my thing with mental health with me was, okay, you gonna outsmart every situation. My mama sent me up the road to try to lock me up. I sit and make up plans in the room how I'm gonna terrorize everybody in this room. Me and my friends, we swapped pills, we did all kind of stuff. It just was like, it actually gave me more crazy stuff to do. I actually was the one that, oh, I'm gonna be smart about this thing here. We gonna see how many people we can drive crazy. They gonna be needing some pills by the time they finish dealing with me for these 90 days. And that was me. That was my thing with it. And it's with these things, what we got to realize is we can't, sometimes you can't put everything in the air. Everything's not meant to be said. And I think more so of him saying that was not because he was even worried about the fact that it was going to be suicide. He was trying to make a point about him wanting to hurry up and rush this economy back in place. But if you put these people back to work in this quarantine is not, I mean, the issue is not fixed. The coronavirus is not fixed. So now you're putting 101 people back in the same spots for there to be 101 people passing this plague on, which that's not a good thing. So you can rush the economy up, but you're going to rush the economy up for it to be gone. So I don't think the reason for him saying it was to justify another conversation. And I didn't think that was acceptable for that to be the reason why you say that. Because no matter what you do in that situation, rushing to get the economy back together, that is not going to help the situation. So rather there be suicides, true, there could be if you stay in the house. But if you send them all out, there's going to be deaths by millions. Because if the economy ain't ready and we don't have this corona outbreak under, people gonna die anyway. So what you want? You want suicides, or you want millions of people dead because you done rush and put people back in a spot where we're back together and acting like corona never exists when it's still here.
Okay,
So
Shantae, weigh in on that. What is your take on that?
So, this suicide is a very deep conversation. I almost committed suicide when I was a teenager. So I actually agree and I disagree. I agree that the suicide rate is going to be alarming. I agree that right now a lot of Americans are experiencing cabin fever and depression. I agree
And
that
hold on one second, Shantae. Tanisha Morris has just joined the show. Hello, ladies. Shantae was giving us her take on President Trump's conversation about suicide and what she thought about what Sharika just said. So I'm getting you up to speed, and go, Shantae.
Well, I was going to say, I think that Sharika brought it home when she was talking about the plague, or this pandemic, how it's striking all over the world. And I think that a lot of people are going to commit suicide if they're stuck in the house. But I think that she's very accurate in saying that if we all go back to work and get off of these shutdowns, that people are going to die from the pandemic. I think that if we go back to work and go back to quote unquote life as usual too soon, then we're going to have more homicides. We're going to have more looting. We're going to have more stealing because people are afraid of simple things like not having toilet paper. So when you're stuck in the house and you can't get out, and that's still mental health. It's just a different type of mental health. It might look more like psychosis or schizophrenia or borderline personality disorder. It's different things other than depression or anxiety. Like, people hear about depression, people sort of know about bipolar, but even when it comes to a lot of the anger and a lot of the madness, it's still mental health. It's just different diagnoses that sometimes aren't talked about.
Right. So, Tanisha, what would thank you for joining us. We're so happy to see your beautiful face. What is your take on what President Trump, Sharika's take on it was that his only reason for saying what he said was not a concern for mental health. Although I actually am thankful that he said it because it brought up these conversations. That's the caveat is that it brought up these conversations. But what is your take on what he said and his reasoning for saying it? And do you agree that he shouldn't have said it because it shouldn't have been put out in the atmosphere? Or do you feel that it should have been said because it's going to happen? Or what is your take on it? What's your point of view?
I think that let me first say I think spiritually we have to watch the seeds that are being planted. When you plant seeds like that, people grasp them, they bury them, and they water them, they grow, and they manifest. And I think that that was put out there for that purpose. Not to say that Donald Trump is a wicked man. I'm just saying that I don't think that that's something that should have been said. I think the likelihood of that is very possible, due to what, I'm not sure what Sharika said, but like Shantae was saying, there are going to definitely be some worries and people panic, as if, about what they're going to eat. Like she says, simple things as far as toilet paper, toiletries and things like that. I think that it could happen. I'm just one that believes that the possibility of anything could happen if it's allowed. But I think as people, we have to be stronger than that and overcome what's going on. I think that there's bigger things that's going on, and I can't identify what they are right now. Neither can you. Neither any of us can. But I think that prayer is the biggest thing that we can do right now.
Right.
I do think that it should be taken. I think it's a red flag with people with mental disabilities, because I feel like it's almost an outlet for them. That's why I said I don't think that the seed should have been planted. But as far as that, what, Tanya?
No, well, I want you to finish your thought first before I say something. I was going to ask you a question, but I need you to finish.
You interrupted it now. What is it?
The different one face took a sister out. I'm sorry. Well, what I was going to say was, so do you think that, as Donald Trump said, you don't want the cure to be worse than the disease, but do you think that the means justifies the end? In other words, people are talking about, because when I tell you, after he said that, there have been 100 sound bites about mental health. I know Shantae was mentioning something earlier off camera. She was talking about something that they put in place for elementary school kids and mental health. Would they have done all that had he not threw it out there? So that's my question. And and in this platform, I am playing devil's advocate because I think it could go both ways. However, do you think that by him saying that, some good can come out of it?
I do. I think that it can go both ways. I think that it's a horrible thing when things like this happen, and then people put preventatives in place that should have already been in place. These things should have already been in place. I'm thankful that they're putting them in place, but I just think that these are issues that should have been addressed.
Right.
Because it's only fair. So, one thing we have to learn about this government is this government does what it wants to do. It's very unpredictable. The only thing I can say is that when things are put in place like this, you have to take advantage of the possibilities that are given, and the things that are given to us. So I mean, if you can utilize those resources, do so.
Right.
Well, you can.
Can I say something real
Yes, ma'am.
quick?
Of course you can.
So when it comes to mental health, so for instance, I facilitate groups where I work. And because I facilitate groups with the socialization, I'm laid off just because there can't be, I have 15 people in my group, 12 are billable. And that just means that the state says that I can't have more than 15 people in a room. Sometimes they bring in an assistant because I have some people who want to be in my room, and I'll take more people. I can take up to 30 people when I have an assistant, but because of socialization, I can't work. But mental health is treated just like as first responders. So my coworkers who do individual groups, they're still in the field working. Some are doing telehealth where they're doing it over the phone and video, but some are still going into people's households because they have to take them their medication. It's a priority to get them their medication. So when it's talking about the suicide, I'm not sure, there's a lot of people who live with mental health who are undiagnosed. And although we may have the liberties of having, I have a freshman, a 15-year-old son, and a 3-year-old son running around here in the house. So it keeps me preoccupied compared to that cat lady, that 50-year-old lady that's living by herself with 8 cats without being able to socialize and having any kind of outlet. That brings about, people going stir crazy. That's where I said, like with what Sharika was saying, where people start panicking, and Tanisha, where the panic sets in and people get afraid. And so I do believe that some of it is spiritual. I think that prayer is the key, but I also believe that God made everything. And God may have set this up for the conversation because there's a lot of people who suffer. Like I thrive with mental health. I don't suffer, I don't battle. I used to suffer, I used to battle when I didn't know what it was, when I had no control over it. I take medicine. Some people don't need medicine. Some people are able to pray. Some people are able to use the church. Some people are able to fast. Some people are able to change their diet, and it gets it through it, because the diets and things that we eat, they also can bring about different things, the chemical imbalance. So with everything going on, and you even think about that, you're stuck in the house. You can eat only what you can eat. Some of these people can't cook, so they eat ramen noodles and Pop-Tarts only, and it just brings about more of that. And when you don't have anyone to talk to or any outlet, they're sitting in the house looking at these 4 walls, going from the living room to the dining room, talking to themselves. And then you send them outside in public. So with it, I think that the 1,000 people with the suicide aren't necessarily the conversation of those of us who live with it compared to those who aren't diagnosed.
Wow. Okay.
But
Go
my
ahead,
thing is
Sharika.
everything that everybody's doing, who are going out there to find the ones that are not diagnosed? What are we doing differently to find? Because of course, all the ones that we're looking at, we're getting the people who already been diagnosed. We're going to the same people house who already we know need their medicine. What are you doing different to find the ones who are not being diagnosed or who has not been diagnosed? Are you having someone go out there and find out, okay, you're in the house, how are you doing? Where are these outlets at for these people that has not been diagnosed need to be found? What outlets are you? What are the things that you're doing different to make it something of substance? Because if you're not bringing a solution for those people who, okay, I've been sitting in my house and now I'm realizing that what was keeping me from going crazy was the fact that I was moving, shaking, and going. But now I'm sitting in my house and I realize I really got a problem. So what are we doing for those people who have not been diagnosed?
So I got my certification. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, you're good. Go ahead. Please go ahead.
I got my certifications through the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network. And what they've done, they have like the Warm Suicide Hotline. One of my friends, her husband works for the VA. They have, and he's still working as a first responder, where they have them working 24 hours a day from work because of the confidentiality. So they're still going into a building, taking the phone calls of people who may be exhibiting any kind of symptoms. And my son is a freshman, and on the website of the school, they actually have mental health resources. So when you click on the website, it gives a list of the different hospitals, they have the ones that are open to the public where you can actually go in and see a therapist, and they have the ones where they're doing telehealth. It's called telehealth, where they're doing the video chats and the over the phone conversations. Some places are taking new clients, some places aren't, but they have a lot of places that are. One of my friends, his wife is a therapist, a psychiatrist, and she's taking new clients. She's still having it. She's in Cartersville. She still has them coming in to see her. even with the coronavirus going on.
But see,
And you know what?
that's
We're doing it right now. We're doing something. At the end of this video, when this video is all said and done, telehealth and whatever other information we can put in this video is going to be a part of this video. So when people come watch it, guess what? This now becomes a resource. And I know we had talked about the spirituality of it. I looked up a scripture, Romans 8:28, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good for those who are called according to his purpose. So when we start talking about the spirituality aspects of it, we start talking about God, like what Shantae had mentioned. This does two things. It'll put seeds in the ground for the fools, and it'll also put seeds in the ground for the people that are going to be reaping a harvest from this. So for us in this panel, I know for sure, we're planting seed. We're taking the seed and we're going to use this for the good of the people that we serve. So the platform that we have specifically, there's going to be people that are going to be helped from the testimonies that get shared, from the things that we talk about, and from the information that we're going to pass on. So that in and of itself, now, is everybody doing that? No. But for those of us that can, I think it's a valid statement to say that there are some things being done. Should it have been done before now? Yes. But
Yes.
go ahead, Tanisha, because I see your face. I see your face. What you gonna say? Say it.
okay. You know what? It has something to do with what Shantae said. It's like she said that people are, even now, some people are not taking new, they're not taking new clients or patients for mental health. And more importantly, Shantae, I understand you once suffered from mental illness, or you say you are treated now. You're actually
There's no treatment. There's no cure to it. You just take medicine and it manages it. I still live with it. If I stop taking my medicine right now, as soon as everything hit, I told my manager, I was like, I need to go to my doctor. I went to my doctor. I have prescription on hold at the pharmacy, and I have samples because I was like, if those delivery trucks stop delivering, I'm going to come back and I'm going to be one of your clients. Because when I'm off meds, I go from managing multi-million-dollar projects to literally sleeping outside on the streets, peeing myself. This weed will be on somebody's floor somewhere or halfway in my head, and I might be walking the streets still. I go from some streets where y'all might have to buy me a meal because I have $50 to last me for 3 months. I don't have my phones. I come missing. There's missing persons reports. That's what happens when I'm off my meds.
Okay, so let me ask you this. In an epidemic like this, what do you suggest to people who have mental illnesses like yourself? What are some preventatives that what are your coping methods? Outside of there just being medication that you can take, what are some of your coping methods?
So there's something
through a time like this.
Right. There's something called the WRAP. It's WRAP, Wellness Recovery Action Plan. It was developed by Mary Ellen Copeland, I want to say back in the 60s or 70s. And as CPS is where we get our training, everything comes from WRAP. So WRAP, you create like a wellness, you create like your action plan, you create your wellness toolbox. So what your wellness toolbox looks like is when I'm well, these are the things that I do. If I listen to music, if I dance, if I sing, if I cook, these are the things that I do when I'm well. So if I start to experience post-crisis or any kind of crisis, because in your WRAP, you create that too, my crisis management plan. If I'm in crisis, call these people. This is who I want to take care of me. This is my doctor. So you lay it all out. It can be Googled. If you don't have access to the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network or a WRAP book, you can Google it. There's videos on the WRAP, and you can order a book. The books are between $10 and $20 and create a WRAP. But it keeps you with coping skills. It shows you this is what I need to do. So when you start feeling the pressure and the strain, like maybe I should just stop everything, turn on some music, sing at the top of my lungs, and then just be for a minute. Maybe I should read my Bible. Maybe I should go pray. Maybe I should meditate. Maybe I should drink some tea. Something as simple as that, those are the things that you do when you're well. So if you get off kilter, you can start doing those things to make you feel better. There's actually one of my interventions at work. We talked about vitamin D. I take vitamin D pills because if you can't, well, I got capsules from my doctor during this time because if you can't get outside and get sunlight, statistics have been shown that when you can't get vitamin D, it leads to depression. It's the winter blues. That's why there's more people who commit suicide and who deal with or live with depression during the winter months than the summer months, because in the summertime, everything's festive, but you're able to go outside, you're able to take in that sunlight, that fresh air. And with people being stuck in the house, it's like winter blues all over again.
Wow. So I've heard somebody told me about it. It's called SAD, seasonal affective disorder, where
Yes.
when you're trapped in a house and it's you can't go outside, you literally start to go stir crazy. And that
Yes,
so it's an actual it has a term.
it
Um
does.
so one of the other topics, Sharika, that you wanted to touch on in relationship to was the stimulus package in relationship to um the conversation that we're having. So what part of
I
that
think
would
we'll jump back to the stimulus package because I think Chantel might have somebody that can more explain it better than us and get some more expert details on the stimulus package. So we'll go jump back to that later. But I think the next thing we should talk about is serving and being deployed. That's another thing that's been touchy because we actually have a clip of a lady who left her kids and her husband and she's deployed, and she was talking about mental illness and being depressed that she's not with her family. And just like I told you one thing about the army thing, that touches me because my father, he served in the army, and if you see my daddy now, you would think he has never did nothing in his life. My daddy is that person that's walking around peeing on himself, drinking, and he was fine. He got hit in the head. Some guys tried to rob him. They hit him in the head. He was in a coma for some time. They actually say he was not gonna live, or if he lived, he would never be able to walk or talk again. And my thing was, I was 13, I was pregnant, and my family wanted me to just go ahead and pull the plug because of all the scary things they said. But my thing was, I knew God, and I wasn't gonna be the one to do it. I said, if God want him, he gonna take him on this ventilator, however he want him, but he won't get him through the action of me helping you do that. And so now my family and I battle with the fact, do I think that he's better now because he's alive, and knowing my daddy's status before and how he's living now. So
wow. This is my question, and I don't know if any of you all, Shantae, with you being in the field, is there any real screening for people going into the military? Because the thing is, when you sign up to go into the military, besides the accidents and things that can happen, you're knowing that you're going to get deployed away from your family. But are there any screenings for people that are at higher risk for depression going into the military?
There definitely are.
So, I, my experience, I have some experience with a lot of what you just said. One, when it comes to my diagnosis, I probably lived with depression for a long time. I got diagnosed with depression as a teenager, but they didn't give me any medication. But it wasn't until I got assaulted and robbed and I got hit in the head that it led to the psychosis and me walking the streets talking to myself. So the head injury piece I could identify with. And my grandfather lived with schizophrenia, and it was a result of him being in a trucking accident. So while we have our truck drivers on the road, he got into a trucking accident where his semi truck, flipped off the highway, and it led to the schizophrenia. And my mother is a Gulf War veteran. So what happens is, so first off, my father died in front of me when I was 9, and 9 months later, my mom, to have a better life for me, went into the military. So she was dealing with her own set of trauma. But they do mental health evaluations when you first enter into the military. I have an aunt that works for the Pentagon who lives with schizophrenia. and she's a Johns Hopkins graduate, and she's an Air Force veteran. So they do the evaluations, but I think that what they're exposed to, the chemicals, the experimentation, they can also lead to more mental health. I say that because my mom's a Gulf War veteran. She lives with PTSD. My mom, when I was growing up, she did the electrical wiring on planes for Gulfstream, Asaba, Boeing, and she lives with PTSD. So I don't know what it looks like sometimes. You can't tell, but she got a very large settlement from the military because of it. And because they found that a lot of what she was living with came from the war. So when it comes, well, some of the preventative measures that they do, since she was a single parent, and I guess the high risk conversation when you have children, when you have families, she had to turn over her guardianship to someone other than herself, because the thought is when you are in the military, if you're deployed for war or something, if something happens, who takes care of your children? So my grandparents were my guardians. And then at some point, my aunt became a guardian after my grandparents passed away, because it wasn't until she got out of the military that she returned to being my legal guardian. Because while you're in the military, if you're a single parent, you have to have somebody else have guardianship of your children. So I don't know if that answered the question, but that's my only experience. I have, like I said, one of my best friends, her husband works at the VA, and he takes the calls 24 hours. They have a hotline. I'll text her while we're here to get that number for you guys, but they have a hotline for people who are veterans and people who are in the military where they can call and get some support around what they're dealing with right now between their family, because a lot of military, they deal with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, a little more than what the average person deals with. And it can come from something as simple as an accident.
But this is the thing. I congratulate you for being diagnosed. My daddy wasn't that lucky, so he's never been diagnosed. So he's not the one that gets the treatment. He don't get the medicine. He get locked up for stealing a penny candy out of a grocery store. He gets locked up for things that he do, and he has never been diagnosed. He's never had any treatment or anything. Only thing they do is send him to jail for every little thing that he do, or people laugh and make fun of him in the streets and stuff like that. But
I get it. I got a record.
actually got diagnosed. But I'm saying you did get diagnosed and you did get some help. They tell us things like, okay, my daddy is almost literally barely knows his name at time, and they tell us things, unless he want the help, we can't let y'all force him to get help. Y'all can't make him stay here. So my daddy has been going through this ever since I've been 13. I'm 41 now. He has never had a medicine. It's just okay for him to walk around the street, get locked up, and we steady paying fines to get him out of jail. He's living off of Social Security when he served this country.
No, I get it. I get the conversation. Even my last time being incarcerated, I was incarcerated less than 2 years ago. You know, I live by myself. I don't have any government assistance. I drive a brand new 2019 car, but it's because I did it from, you know, my credit's good. It's because I had to use the knowledge that I had before, and I take medication. But I was wrongfully incarcerated for almost 2 years. I had my 3-year-old while in jail. I'm still trying to find 2 more babies because I had triplets. And they said that since I was off my meds, that I was hallucinating giving birth, although I named them and held the babies. And, you know, there's a class action lawsuit for over 200 women who live with mental health who are treated inhumanely at the Fulton County Women's Detention Center. There are women who were held for like a year for criminal trespassing, $500 fines. So I really get it. Like, I go to jail. I go to jail for either criminal trespassing, aggravated assault, or what's my other charge they like to give me?
They like to give you.
Like 3. There's 3 charges that I'm going to jail for, either this, or this. You know, but I was facing 20 years just because they had me classified as homeless for terroristic threats, aggravated assault, and possession of a knife, and the commencement of a felony. And it wasn't until they sent me to Georgia Regional to stabilize me before they even gave me my charges. They just held me for 9 months. They didn't give me a lawyer. They didn't give me a phone call. They didn't even tell me what they were holding me on. So when you are homeless or you live with mental health and you're on and your family can really not do it. Excuse me, your family's limited to what they can do because as an adult, once you're over 18, they have to get out guardianship of you. And to get guardianship costs a minimum of $3,000. And it's not something that you pay your money and then you get guardianship. You have to go through court. You have to show where someone is legally not able to care for themselves. So even if you can get Social Security, you can legally care for yourself, especially if you can get it without a payee. So you're just going to be in the system. There's people who I know who have been arrested 70 times over mental health or drugs and substance abuse, which a lot of people don't know that drugs and substance abuse is classified as mental health. Depending on if you're a transgender, that's classified, like when people hear things like gay and lesbian people are classified as mental health, depending on if you're a male to woman or a woman to male, sometimes classified as mental health. It's I want to say it's multiple personality disorder.
Gender dysphoria.
Gender, there you go.
Gender dysphoria.
But and you can get, Medicaid will cover things such as sex changes, where they won't cover you getting your teeth done, but they'll cover a sex change because of the classification of mental health. So it's like when you start, I mean, it's real. It's much realer than people think. People want to make fun of the people on the streets, but there's vets, there's high functioning people. Stress can lead to mental health.
Mm-hmm. And
Something as simple as taking care of yourself.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Shantae. I lived with a man for 15 years that was PTSD, off and on substance abuse. My second husband got arrested, so he's been gone a year 2 days ago. However, I lived through his mental health. I lived through his paranoia. I lived through the PTSD. I lived through the 1 minute I'm okay, the next minute I'm yelling and screaming at everybody and nobody knows why or what. And the stuff I didn't know about him, I think before he met me, I found out he was homeless. He was on the street, the drug, and these are things that were happening. He was incarcerated several times. The drug addiction was just off the charts before we got together. When we got together, it tapered off, but it was still there. It was still this underlying thing that kept creeping into the relationship because he was trying to self-medicate for mental health. And so because he was trying to self-medicate for mental health, it was an ongoing process. So, and he was a veteran. And so I completely understand. And back to what you were saying, Sharika, about the woman that was deployed, it is when you go, I imagine you're away from your family and you're with these people that you don't know for 6-8 months. You develop relationships with those people eventually. But at first, it has to be, especially considering how old you are. You just got married, you just had a family, and all of a sudden you done left and went off with the military because you think you're helping your family. And the reality is the money is not necessarily worth the distance.
Right.
So that's the other piece to that.
Yeah, I think listening to the young lady, her biggest thing was to just give appreciation that you were actually home with your families and able to, because there were a lot of people complaining about having to be at home with their children during the quarantine, or what we call quarantine, because it's not actual quarantine. You're not quarantined unless you have the virus, but it is suggested that you stay home. But, you know, she was more so saying that this is a time that should really be appreciated, because there are people like herself who cannot appreciate the time with their families because of the choice that they made to join the military. And that's like a lot of other professions. People can't be at home with their families. But, you know, and I know this is a little off subject, but it kind of gave me a concern just now, even listening to Shantae, because you know, at this point, I'm wondering what does happen to the homeless people at this point.
Right.
are under bridges, who don't have covering,
Nothing.
what is happening to our homeless. I think that those, and I appreciate hearing everything else that's going on. But the thing about it is, we all know that mental illness is real. We all have our own stories of mental illness. We all know someone who has suffered mental illness. But the thing about it is what do we do about it in a time like this? And like I said, there's homeless people who have mental illnesses. Who is reaching out to those people? No one is probably the answer. The benefit for you, Shantae, is that you are medicated and you are home and you are with your children. The possibility of you running out of medications, I hope, is not likely. So you are actually in a better state than a lot of people are at this moment. So the thing is not to, and I understand you went through everything that you went through, but my focus here today is to figure out what to do for people who are not in your situation right now. Because there's people like Sharika's dad who are not in your situation right now, who are still trying to deal with this. And I'm not, they'll tell you, I'm just one of them people that's just like, okay, your situation is taken care of. Let's take care of somebody else's. And that's just the way that I am. So my thing is, I want to know what to do for them people. I'm not really interested in anything else, because right now they're in a crisis and their life might very well depend on it. We're fine.
Believe it or not, sometimes when you're homeless, especially when you look homeless, there's more resources. The fact that I might have on a BCBG and
Hold on, can I come in right there? At this point, with my father, let me tell you the difference in my father and a bunch of people. With my father, he has his good days, and my father has suits that cost over $1,000 and something dollars that he can put on and he can dress up. And most of the time, and I promise you, I would not be lying to you. Every time we have tried to take him to court to try to get him where we actually can get power of attorney over him, I promise you, we find him on one of them good days. He go in there and he talk to the judge, and they be like, "You really got to be playing with me. This man is not doing these things that y'all say he's doing." Every time we have took him to court, our case has gotten thrown out. Every single time we've took him. My daddy will walk in the room looking better than everybody in the courtroom, including the judge.
And because they're supposed to be
smart.
Right.
He is smart as all about those. There is nothing he can't tell you that he know history from day 1 to day 21.
Right.
There's nothing. So I don't know if the look homeless thing might be the thing or what it's taking, but there is people who is functional, and there are some that's just not, which I know my daddy can have his good days, but I know with the correct medications, a diagnosis, he could do a whole lot better.
And this is
the thing now, like right now, I haven't talked to my daddy in months, and what that means is he's going off on a binge. He don't realize that I do have this Obama phone. I can pick up the phone and call my daughter. And we don't know what the quarantine is doing for him at this moment. We don't know, because I haven't talked to him, because he's in that state now where I haven't spoke to him. But when he's in his good times, he's going to speak to his grandkids every day.
And see, that's what I'm talking about. It's just crazy. Because even with Shantae, I just heard you say people who look homeless tend to have more resources, but I don't really necessarily find that true. And I'm gonna tell you why I don't find that true. And it could be, but I can't see the logic in that. Because even in a time like this, you also mentioned that there are people who are not taking new patients. That are not taking new patients.
It's not there's a supply and demand. You can't take everybody in. I mean, there's a supply and demand with every profession. There's a supply and demand. If you have one therapist, they can only see so many people a day, because what people don't realize is even with me working in the field, I have a therapist, and I have group interventions once a week, and I have a check-in once a week. One of my clients just died. So I have people calling to check on me and my own mental state. So if you take in too many people, it stops the person that's trying to help from being effective at being able to help, because you can only do so much. But right now, the reason why I made that statement is I know here in Atlanta, Councilman Antonio Brown just posted on his Facebook about a bunch of places that opened. The homeless people are getting checked for COVID-19, whereas we're on quarantine. They are actually, there's free hospitals, there's free inpatient places. Now the shelters, because of socialization, a lot of the shelters are closed, but they're opening up parking decks and putting people 6 feet apart so that they have a place to stay. And I'm not saying that that's better than being in a 1,400, I live in an apartment, but being in a 1,400 square foot apartment with lights and water, but they have some kind of place where it's safe for them and they're getting checked. The rest of us, we're sitting here hoping and praying that we don't have it because it can lay dormant, like it's airborne. There's people who they think that they had it. I did a training on COVID-19 through work, and they're thinking that it started showing up in September. And this is coming from like the CDC, some of these quotes. So although it didn't show up till December, January, they're saying that this originated around September. So it stayed for 3 months before people became symptomatic. So although we're quarantining for 14 days, we may have it and not know, but the homeless are being able to be checked. So that's why it's made the statement that with some of them, if you look homeless, sometimes you have it a little easier than people who don't.
Well,
And the other side, but let me say this real quick, Tanisha. The other side of that is there are people with boots on the ground. There are people with boots on the ground. I saw an organization the other day that was putting out portable sinks in different areas for people to be able to wash their hands that are living on the street. So and these people were on the ground before this all started. They were doing stuff in the community before. For every area that's not being serviced, there are areas that are. And the sad truth of it is that we can only help who we can help. Like the four of us could each help 30 people, but then you got this other 30 people that aren't getting help. And it's sad that it works that way. But when she talks about, I have a girlfriend that lived homeless for a whole year. She didn't look homeless, never looked homeless. Sharika Altamis. Part of her testimony is that she was homeless for a long time. And she told me, because I was saying, we're going to go downtown. Our outreach program at the church is going to go downtown and feed the homeless. She said, honey, why? They get brand new shoes. They get more food in a little bit. They're all they got to do is stand in line. They could eat 3-4 meals a day. She said, other than being outside, unless you're just mentally not stable enough to go get food, and then that's a whole nother issue. But for people that are homeless for not mental illness or people that look homeless, they do have actually a lot of resources. And it's weird because if you're struggling, when I was going through situations where I was trying to figure out where I was going to live, they were like, well, when you're homeless, we can help you. So there's resources for me being homeless, but not resources to keep me in my home. So there's more resources for homeless people that are cognizant enough to get help. Now that's the thing. Than there are for people that are like us sitting at home where we like, okay, well, I don't know how I'm gonna pay my bills. But if you homeless, oh, we got you. And so that happens a lot too.
And I used to work at a homeless shelter.
I hear that, but just goes back to if the resources are available. And if you guys know those resources, I really expect to see those bulletins up with this so that people know. Shantae, you say there are places where they are doing things in a parking garage and where they're testing people for COVID-19. I really expect to see all of that up, with this so that people know where they can go to get these resources so they're not left out in the dark. You know what I'm saying? So they're not just hearing this, they're actually seeing where they could go. So if you could drop those locations and things so that it's actually up and people can see that would truly be a blessing to somebody,
And we definitely wanted to make sure, I know at the end of this video, I was going to make sure that the VA hotline for suicide, the other hotline, all of the information that we're talking about today is going to be a part of this video. Because like I stated earlier, our platform is a part of being able to help. And for anybody that knows somebody that's on the street, once this information goes out, that then becomes a springboard for somebody able to say, hey, I saw this video. And Auntie Boo Boo, who she won't come in the house, but see if you can get her to go over to this place because they can maybe test her for corona, and they can maybe give her some place to sleep, and she can maybe get a sandwich. So that's the whole purpose of this, is that. But that's why I said, even though Donald Trump, aka my Cheeto Puff, that's my nickname for Donald, even though, because I promise he's orange, but even though Donald Trump said that for nefarious reasons, the reality of it is it sparked conversation. And every time something sparks a conversation, it then is a tool for change. So if there was nothing to irritate us, to make us jump on here and have a conversation, then would we have been putting out information about it? Would we have been talking about it? I mean, Shantae, this is your bread and butter. This is what you eat, sleep, and breathe every day. But for those of us that we deal with mental health, but we're dealing with it in our own personal selves. We're not out there on the front lines. And so this then put us from sitting at the house going, I might be a little special today in myself, to now looking out past ourselves and saying, hey, let me see what we can do, because we have a platform to help somebody else. And so that if for no other reason, that was a good part of what happened, and what came forth from this was the fact that we're talking about it, and we wouldn't have been talking about it prior to now. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that.
I was going to say real quick, this goes back to what Tanisha and Sharika were talking about when it comes to the spiritual aspect, and why I say that, like, I believe in God. I believe, I was raised Pentecostal. So at any given moment, I might break out speaking in tongues, praying. I just have the mouth of a sailor, where I like to cuss a lot. But that's my character defect. But I believe in God, and I say that to say,
but I cuss a little bit.
I cuss a lot. And I say that to say, I just don't believe that God makes mistakes. And the fact that I would be able to be as a quote unquote accomplished as I am on paper, but willing to have the conversation about mental health, I just believe that's my calling. So the fact that I choose to go into prisons and things like that, for who I am in the present moment, when God's ready to deliver me from cursing, then I'll be delivered from it. When I start feeling convicted about it, then I'll feel convicted about it. But I plan on going into prisons and having this conversation. I go up against county commissioners with this conversation. I advocate, I protest in this conversation. So I live it. When you're dealing with somebody who's a registered sex offender, who's talking about cutting off people's heads and screwing their vaginas, it don't work for me to be like, you know what? I'm gonna douse you with some oil right now and pray for you. Like, sometimes your life is like, I've been trained, I'm certified to be able to interact with people who might be combative with mental health as far as in self-defense. I have to get certified every 6 months to be able to do that, because I work in the field. So it's real. Everyone with mental health isn't violent. So I don't want to put that stigma out there. But this is a very real conversation, and it's very near and dear to me. But God doesn't make mistakes. Even us having this conversation, even with the president saying that it might have come off, he comes off a little brat, a little rough sometimes. But it's a conversation. And without this conversation, people like your father wouldn't be able to get some of the resources of finding out where they can go to not be in the streets. It's a conversation, that must be had.
You're right.
And the other side of it too, with Sharika, with your dad, and because he is so aware, he kind of, when Shantae was talking about how she was off meds, it sounds very similar, because he was very much of an intelligent, functioning man prior to the accident. And then after the accident, there's this head trauma, and now he's got, and now I got mental health. So because he's very aware, it's harder for him, because he has to want to go get help. And so in his psychosis, when the illness kicks up on him, now I don't want help, I want to go do what I'm doing. And so that's
it's not even that. It's not a want. It's not a want.
He don't think he needs
help. Yeah, you don't think that you need the help.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
He really wanted, and he can have conversations with you to make you think you crazy. He really
Yeah.
have conversation with me sometime. I'm like, and I'm here trying to save you, but you just made me look real stupid just now. And that's how we look in court most of the time when we go to court.
Mm.
We look real stupid because he outsmarts all of us.
Wow. Wow. But I had someone tell me that one time because I promise I think she's bipolar because her mood swings so hard. And so she'll go from everything's great and wonderful to she cussing you out and telling you you dead to her. She don't want to talk to you no more. And I'm like, and that's like without nothing. It could be as simple as, okay, well, this is what it is, and this is what we're doing. No, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, you just, and I said, did you ever think that you needed to go get help with thinking that suicide is an option and thinking, she said, why would I go someplace where I can manipulate everybody in the building? And I'm just looking at her like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. But she meant that. And this is a person that she holds a job, she takes care of her kids. But
Mm-hmm.
when she snaps, she snaps. And they be calling me going, have you seen such and such? No, baby, I haven't seen her. But she's perfectly fine and she functions great and she goes to work every day. But every now and again, she will snap. And when she snaps, it looks all types of crazy. And so I understand what you're saying. If you don't think that there's anything wrong with you, why go get medication? You have to think
Right.
something's wrong for you to go get help. So I understand that too. So how do we help those people, Shantae? That's the question. How do we
Now
help
that's what I
the
want to
person
know.
that doesn't think they need help?
You got to find their why. Like you hear with network marketing, people are always like, "Oh, what's your why?" You got to find their why. My why was my kids. So I remember at the transitional housing place, and they said, "Well, you said you want to see your kids. If you want to see your kids, you'll sign off on this piece of paper saying that you'll take your medicine." And I was like, "I don't take medicine. I'm a herbalist. I eat healthy. I'm not eating this. I'm not taking this. You just want me to be a dope fiend. I ain't being no dope fiend. I ain't taking medicine." And they told me that I could see my child, who at the time was 5, if I took my medicine, and that was enough for me to take my medicine. And for those who don't take pills, there's always Invega or Haldol, which is a shot that you get once a month. It gets in the system in about 24, 48 hours. It wears off about 2, 3 days before it's time to get another shot. But for those, there's ACT teams out there. There's other CPSs who advocate. There's CPSs who will go to court with a person. When I first got diagnosed, there was something called the mental health diversion courts that stop you from being in and out of jail, where they advocate for you. There's no longer mental health diversion courts, but there's plenty of ACT teams. You can Google it. There's ACT teams, and with most agencies, there's about 30 ACT teams in the state of Georgia. And that includes a nurse, a doctor, a psychiatrist, a voc rehab person, a substance abuse counselor, and a CPS and a case manager. And that's your ACT team. They see you 4 to 5 times a week.
So we need to figure out what resources are in the town that he's in South Carolina, Sharika, and we'll get on that with it just to see if we can maybe get some people to not AKA, look for your dad, find him and start trying to work with him. Because maybe it is above the family. Maybe it is time to bring some intervention in. And because you guys have exhausted everything that you can do as his family and with the HIPAA laws in place, HIPAA protects us, but HIPAA protects the actually sane and everybody okay. But HIPAA is detrimental for the person that has an issue because
Right.
I could do nothing for my husband, even as his spouse, because HIPAA laws prevented them from telling me anything. Yeah, but he needs help and he needs this and he needs that. Well, we can't tell you nothing. So HIPAA helps and it hurts too, because when you have a situation like your father's, or even like in Shantae's situation, when she was out there, it's like HIPAA says, as long as you can tell us that you don't want it, we can't tell nobody none of your business. And that is a hindrance. And there needs to be something done about where HIPAA is not okay. Because, and I understand there was a lot of senior abuse and a lot of mental ill patient abuse and a lot of things that were done against people's will before HIPAA. So then they put HIPAA in place to protect people, but at the same time, it has also caused a whole lot of hindrances too. So
HIPAA, just to stop you right there, Tanya, HIPAA does not, it doesn't, that doesn't have anything. They would never keep abuse or anything away from you. And Sharika and I deal with HIPAA and have for years.
Okay.
HIPAA was actually a privacy act as far as information, your information. So you're absolutely right when you say that it protects a person's information as far as their mental status and things like that, because technically it's not really anybody else's business unless they want to display that business to you. So you're absolutely right about that, but not about abuse or anything like that. That would definitely be addressed. It doesn't have anything to do with. That's not what HIPAA is.
And when I said that in that manner, I was speaking in terms of, like, for example, with Sharika's dad, there's only so much information because she doesn't have power of attorney over him. She's not his guardian. So because he can talk for himself, his privacy and the Privacy Act protects him because he can come in and talk for himself and then lose it again and go back out into the streets. Well, because of that his privacy and his information is covered under HIPAA, right? And so that means that nobody can get that information. She can't even call no hospitals and necessarily say, have you seen my dad? Because they can't give out his information, but he has a mental illness that isn't diagnosed. So HIPAA protects him, his privacy and his information, but it also stops you from being able to intervene.
At the hospital now, see, this is the case with my dad, what it would be if he's at the hospital now. Do he know he's riding homes? So how is he?
Does he know he's what?
With my dad, at some points in time, is do he know who he is? So if he was at the hospital, he could be just laying there as a John Doe, because he at some points don't even know he riding homes. He might be any character that he'll tell you in a minute. I'm one day and I wake up from just losing my mind and killing everybody. He could be any character that's in his head.
Wow.
At that point in time. So he probably could have gone in there and say he was so and so, and then he could have gone in there and say he was someone else. That's wouldn't be how that go. You wouldn't know how to find him. So they of course know who he say he is, so he's just probably John Doe.
Wow.
So if it helps you any, to give you some insight, when I'm in psychosis, I know who I am. The problem is, it's almost like Alzheimer's or dementia. Like, you forget how to get home, you forget your phone number, you forget those things, which then has them classify you as John Doe or Jane Doe. Pablo Escobar becomes my daddy. I'm Beyonce, but I still know that I'm Shantae McLaughlin. But they don't interact with that. They just interact with the hallucinations and the delusions, which then has them, even if you say, call this person, they may or may not call because they may think that you're just being delusional. But as a family member, as someone, there's organizations like NAMI. I recommend, if NAMI is a program, I think it's National Alliance for Mental Illness, but they're statewide. They have different chapters. I mean, they're throughout the U.S. They have different chapters. My mother went and attended NAMI, where she could be with a group of people. She did schizophrenia because I was diagnosed with schizophrenia for about 7 years. And there were about 20 other families, friends of people with mental health, and it served as a support group. But it was also like, I think it was either 8 weeks or 12 weeks, where they went every week. And she was able to be informed, but it served as a support group. I think she got a certificate at the end. But where you can have other access to other resources and interact with other family members and friends who are dealing with the same thing you're dealing with, so that you can get through to your relative. But all that I'll say is, when you're in that state, there's nothing that you can do other than love on your dad, because although your intentions might be great, he's in and out, and there's nothing that you can do, and you'll exhaust yourself and you'll drive yourself crazy trying to put sanity on insanity. And there's nothing that you can do. And it might be a very powerless feeling. You can pray, you can be compassionate, because when you're in that state, like when I'm in that state of being, I know how people treat me. So when I'm good, I'm well, I remember the people who actually took me into their houses, who gave me meals. I remember the people who dropped me off at 5 points at 3 in the morning, like, I ain't taking you nowhere. You know, so when you're in that state, you know who you can remember. It's just a conversation. So just keep loving on your dad, keep treating him well, because there's going to be a day in which he's not in that state of mind and where he's well, and he'll be able to remember all the good things that you did for him.
Wow. So quickly before we get off of here, because I know we are running close on time, and I don't know if the expert that you had in terms of the stimulus package was going to be available, because I know he was in another meeting. If we wanted to touch on the stimulus package and just briefly talk about what that means in terms of the average citizen, and because I personally don't think $3,400 is going to alleviate the suffering of something that looks like it's going to last a lot longer than that will hold anybody. That's my personal feeling. It's a help, but it's also a drop in the bucket. So what information does what is our thought process on the stimulus package? Like, what is everybody's? Because, like, again, like I said, I feel like it's a drop in the bucket. What does anybody else feel about it, and what it means or doesn't mean?
Well, this is my thought process with that, and that's why I also put it in the video that Candy had up about the bill deferment. Because just think, if they're giving you some time, and they're doing a lot of things interest free, you're getting to put bills, like if you have a car payment, they're giving you 3 or 4 months or whatever time they're giving you, and you're adding it onto the back end of your payment. It's not like it's gonna, oh, after this 3 months over, I got to come up with those 3 months I missed. It's actually, if you was going to be finishing December, you're just going to be finishing March now. And I think that, along with all the other things they put together, if you play it right and you're smart, you could actually make it from there. Because he could have, and everybody could have said, y'all just figure it all out, because we got to live too. But the fact that they did something is better than not doing anything. It's one of those situations like with mental health. It's sad you can't get everything you need, but the fact that there are some things put in place, like being able to miss 3 or 4 months on this bill so that you can have that money just in case something inevitable will happen or whatever happens. So I think that anything helps at this point.
And
Right.
I'm like Sharika. I was not aware, fully aware until yesterday that there are people who are not eating at all. So I think it's kind of ungrateful to even think that $2, isn't enough, because that's something that somebody doesn't have.
Right.
You know, some people, they live a certain lifestyle, and hey, kudos to them. But, for some of us, we're just thankful for the little bit that we can get, because it go a long ways. And some of us know how to make that work. I know people who can go in a grocery store like myself with $50 and all the responsibility that I have, and I can come out of that and make meals out of that if I need to survive. I think that America is really spoiled, and I think that we become accustomed to having what we want when we want it, and that's just the way that it's been. And now we are going through, because I mean, this almost reminds you of a famine, so
But it's
the
spiritual. Everything is
it
spiritual.
is, so the thing about it is, anything that they are going to give, we are truly grateful for. And that's all we can be right now. And like I said, prayer is, because my whole opinion about the thing is spiritual, and everybody's not going to agree. But I feel like for the whole world to be affected, and going into, as what I said before, into a quarantine, I feel like that is God saying, sit down and listen to me, because I am trying to speak to you all. And the thing about it is, if you know anything about the word of God, he said every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess. But he would not do what he needed to do until every man had knowledge of him. And I feel like this is his way of saying, I am here. And y'all are going to listen. You're not going to work. You're not going to party. You're not going to run the streets. You're not going to go do everything that you want to do, because now it's time to listen to me. And I just those are my thoughts. Those are my spiritual thoughts. And I believe that, but I believe also that he takes care of his people. And I believe that even using Donald Trump, people don't like Donald Trump,
I
but the
love
thing about
Cheeto.
it
Don't
is,
start with Cheeto. I love that's my
here's
boy.
the thing though, there's a God that's greater than him, because he is allowing him to give us the resources that are needed, not the resources that are wanted, but the resources that are needed, so that we can still carry on and do what we need to do for our families. And like I said, everybody isn't as fortunate. And I pray to God that, we as people can actually try to reach and meet some of the people's needs who are not as fortunate as we are, but every little bit counts. And I know that's all I ask me, but every little bit counts.
No, girl, I just wanted you to get your feelings out. I just needed you to just say what it is. Shantae, how about you?
I agree. I think it was really good for them to add in that freelance piece. Like, I'm a contractor. So when they first did the unemployment, I mean, the layoffs, and they were talking about unemployment checks, and I was like, I'm a contractor. There's no unemployment check. There's me having a consulting company, and I better get it how I live with my own company, because I still got rent, I still got car note, and I still got kids. But I think that them adding in that freelance piece where they're offering unemployment to people who gig and people who don't necessarily work traditional jobs. I think it's $600 a week for 4 months. And I think with them adding on that unemployment piece for people who do go into jobs, so I think unemployment is usually 300 to 400 a week on average. The max is usually about 500 or 600. So them adding on that additional 600 so that people are bringing in like $1,000 a week. There was a Republican senator, I want to say, who made a comment about the stimulus money making Americans lazy because they can collect more on unemployment over the next 4 months compared to them going to work every day. I think that was a very ignorant comment, but with deferments, with student loans being deferred, with major bills being able to be deferred, with mortgages being able to be deferred, and with that stimulus money, I think it's what's needed to put America back on track, especially after our last recession from about 10 years ago, where everybody hasn't bounced back fully. Our economy seemed to have made improvements, but I think that having 3 to 4 months of people having extra money and not having a whole lot of debt and bills, I think it'll help the morale. It'll help with the suicide conversation. It'll help with the mental illness. Because when people aren't afraid of not being able to do the basic necessities of feeding their kids, it creates a lot of stress relief.
And
So
I
that's my.
and I tend to agree with all three of you ladies. I think all three of you have valid points, and I also, and when I say it's a drop in the bucket, I don't
Don't try to
necessarily.
fix that now, girl. Don't try to
No,
fix that
well,
now. Nah, I'm
I
messing with
get
you. Go
to,
ahead.
I get to, because it's the conversation. So when I
Exactly.
so that's what we have to do, the conversation. But when I say a drop in the bucket, it's just because when Shantae talks about the reset, there are people that still have not recovered from
Mm,
before. So I don't know. Now, for me, that money will put me in a place of recovery where when this is over with, I'm going to be in a better position than I was before this started. And that's a blessing, but that's not everybody's story. There are some people that that's not going to be enough to help, that their situation was already bad anyway. These are people that are living from one tax year to another one. And that's how, so this may be a stopgate, but it may not necessarily, when this is over with, they might not be in a better position than they were in when it started. And that, when I say drop, because their original thought process on this stimulus was a couple $1,000s a month for however long it lasted. That was the
mm,
original bill. So when they
yep.
dropped that down to a one-time lump sum of $3,400, yes, it's a help. Yes, I'm grateful. Yes, it's needed. But the original bill was $2,000 a month, and they shot
Mm.
that one down. So that's why I say that $2,000 a month would do a whole lot more than a one-time payment of $3,400. And
Yeah, but then
that's why I say that.
Yeah,
That's
but
What
then
where
is
I'm
that
like,
is.
3,400?
I'm kind of like Sharika, what Sharika said. There. I don't know if you've seen, but they're not allowing evictions at this time.
True.
So there are a lot of things put into place, and too, y'all, we just got to be real. um, some people are in situations because they allow themselves to be in them situations. Not everybody, but I mean, some people are not good at managing money, and this can't be the fault of the economy because you chose to do what you wanted to do with your money, and now you're in a deeper hole. So we got to be fair about the situation. And I know a lot of people are upset because some people are receiving stimulus checks and they never worked. So
Right.
even it's you look at it and it's just like why she get some and the only thing she did was stay at home, but that's really not our business. That's not our portion. That's
Yeah.
not our business. But that does aggravate some people, especially the people who wake up every morning and go to work for their children and now they're not able to. But like I was
Right.
saying, what Sharika was saying, there have been there are y'all there are a lot of preventatives put in place right now to keep you from going under. No, it's not going to cover the full cost of your bills, but there are preventatives put into place that will actually help you keep and maintain what you have. And this was the
Right.
goal. This was not to fully take care of you so you could sit home in your air conditioner and have no worries at all. This is because, I mean, if we could do that, it would be great. And some of us were smart enough to do that. So that's right, girl. But I'm just saying, some of us, turn you
I wish my air condition worked for me to sit up in the thing. It ain't
Mine too.
working. I'm trying to go
Mine
outside.
too. And I mean, you know my story as far as my house and stuff. So, this is, it's going. It's going. But at the same time, I'm going to be grateful for everything that I'm given and allowed. And just having life, and being in the right mind is a wonderful place to be right now, even
Right.
through all of this.
But my thing is, Tanya, for you to say about the money, and I heard you say about it was supposed to be this amount for this many months and stuff like that. But you could take that money and make it tons of more money. Okay, if you listen, if you didn't have anything and they didn't give you anything, you would have still had to pay your bills and you would have
Oh,
still had to do
hold on.
something.
Hey, y'all, hold on one quick second. This is my consultant that's working on the package. Hold on. Hey, Al. Al. Can y'all hear him?
Put them on
Uh-uh.
speaker.
He is on speaker. Hold on.
Put it by your speaker
Did you
wherever
get the
it
link?
is.
Did you get? Where's my speaker? Right here. Can you hear me? I can hear you fine. Can y'all hear him?
Yes. Go ahead and introduce him,
We're
Shantae.
talking about the stimulus money right now and how it works. And so Al Bartel is running for Senate, and he's been working with the stimulus package as far as getting the money out into the streets. So he knows some of the he's privy to the conversations that we're not, because they haven't hit the news yet, as far as how the money is going to be distributed in the streets. That's why I wanted him to have that conversation with you all.
So, Al, can you go ahead and tell our audience how they can expect to get the stimulus money and when? That would be very helpful.
Absolutely. Reference, the first reference point is relief money, 1,000 or 20 out to people who have filed it, have a draft or a bank account, automatically deposited. Everybody else,
He's cutting
have
out,
to take it.
Shantae.
Al, did you get the link that she sent you
Okay, well, we can hear
through
him
your
better now, so
email?
we can hear him.
Okay, they can hear you.
Okay, good. I'll continue talking. So the next thing, the first thing is $1,200. Have private account where you file your taxes.
It's the way her phone position.
The second one is the small business plan. The SBA, Small Business Administration, have delegated banks as a SBA approved lender. Language is SBA approved lender. Most of the banks are an SBA approved. Other community banks like Century Bank up in Gwinnett County, Regions Bank, some of the other banks. If you Google approved Small Business Administration, Google that, then come up. The third thing is there are requirements have to be met in order to get this money. So like a list of the people that you employ, their employees of 1099, how you've been tracking your accounts, whether you use QuickBooks, else, verified accounting system, a verified way of tracking your employees, and which bank or which financial institution. Those three things. A verified way for you to track your employees, like when are they employed, how much you pay them, how do you track them, back to how you do your employees. Second thing is how you account for your business. What you buy, what you sell, all that is managed. And most people use QuickBooks or some kind of software to do that. So it's not just filling out a piece of paper and getting this money. You have to have a verified way of tracking your employees, tracking your business, and what kind of bank is. And if those of us who are clear, there's going to be a gap between what the SBA is requiring for our small businesses have an operating system. Most of our small businesses do not have that kind of operating system, even though they do have the information. Those of us who are consultants who are willing to work with small businesses, take the information that you have and upgrade it how the SBA wants it to communicate vendor. Those are the basic reference points. For any of you who want to talk with me longer, get with Shantae so let's set up a meeting for us to continue this conversation.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
absolutely. I think that it's. I think that's very necessary, especially during this time, because there's been so many different allegations of what's going to happen, and nobody has actual facts. It's just an assumption and what they're reading on the internet, and we all know that changes from day to day.
And especially with me, with
Hold on real quick. Hey, Al, thanks for your time. I'll give them, just send me over your schedule. Give me 3 open positions or open times, and I'll give it the ladies and see which one of those time schedules works for them. Does that work?
That works for me, businesswoman.
All right. Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Shantae, for that connection. That was amazing. Sharika, finish what you were saying so that we can wrap this up.
I was saying thank you because for one thing, you know that I would love to turn that over to everybody who owns a clinic, because you know, of course, their clinics are shut down at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the other things that he told me yesterday, he was talking to one of my other friends with a business, and he was saying that for those who get the small business loans for their organizations or companies, if you keep your employees, they'll forgive the loans because they're coming from the Federal Reserve. So there's some, of course, I'll schedule for you guys to talk to him further. What's there is I'm doing Walmart grocery pickup, so I got to pick up my groceries.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm scared about being in the
because
store,
I couldn't
y'all.
hear him that well. What did he say about the first ones who, you know, as far as dressing the individual homes?
If you file taxes and you did it electronically, then you'll get your money faster because they'll electronically pay you. If you didn't file electronically, then you'll have to wait for a paper check.
So what
So
I
let
was
me know
going to say was this has been a sister's point of view, the conversation. And we have been talking about coronavirus and mental health and the stimulus package and everything else that we talked about today. And thank you all for tuning in. And please stay tuned. At the end of this video, we will have information and other things to help out. So if you do not have, if the information does not fit your area, contact us and we will help you search out that information. Thank you again. Thank you, Shantae McLaughlin, for joining us today.